Okay. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Dave Durflinger, the city manager for the city of Carpinteria.
Okay. Okay, Dave. Now we're at our 50th anniversary here, the city of Carpinteria. What are your thoughts now that it's been 50 years?
Well, it's a great milestone and a wonderful time for the community. It's also a great time in reflecting back to look forward. And we're going to be doing that here at the city, doing strategic planning and visioning with the community over the next 2 years to plan for the next 20, 40, 50 years looking forward with the city of Carpinteria.
Dave, can you describe to me the housing mix today in Carpinteria and any thoughts you have of how it's evolved? Dave, can you describe what Carpinteria's housing mix is and maybe how it's evolved?
Yes, Carpinteria has a great diversity of housing, from nice single-family neighborhoods to multifamily apartment and condos, as well as mobile home park spaces. In fact, Carpinteria has one of the highest percentages of mobile home park spaces to its housing as any place in the county. Of course, in recent years, the trend has been towards more expensive real estate, higher rents. Carpinteria is a place that's nearing build-out, and there's not that many opportunities to build new housing. We're on the coast of California, of course, in a very attractive place, so real estate prices are going up, and we're seeing that reflected in the quality of improvements and the type of improvements that are going into all of our neighborhoods.
And would you say we have a good mix of housing versus jobs? I think before you kind of weighed in on how there's a certain amount of mix of jobs that fit housing in the area.
Yes, that's true. One of the things that all communities strive for is a balance between jobs and housing. That's helpful so that you don't have a great amount of commuting either in and out of your community. You have a balanced community. In Carpinteria, we have a near perfect balance of jobs and housing, as it turns out. So the forefathers did good planning in terms of the amount of land that they allocated for different uses, business uses, industrial uses, and housing uses. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's no commuting, because there's not always a match between jobs and housing. So we certainly have a good number of people that live in the community and commute to jobs outside of the community, and jobs that are filled by people that live in other places. But nonetheless, it's important to have a general balance, because it encourages people to live and work here in the community.
So it's getting more and more expensive to be able to afford a home in the community. What's been done in our community to help low-income people afford to live here?
Yes, thank you for asking. That's a real challenge in any community, especially in places that have expensive real estate, and that's true in Carpinteria. Not being an agency that builds housing, we don't have a housing agency here. We're a small local government agency. Larger cities often do that, have their own housing agencies, but in Carpinteria we don't. So we partner with other agencies, collaborate to get affordable housing built and operated here in Carpinteria. One of our great partners in recent years has been People Self-Help Housing Corporation and the County of Santa Barbara, who together with the city have built a number of affordable units. The Dahlia Court project was converted to affordable housing a number of years ago. An addition was made to that in recent years. Now a new project, Casas de las Flores, has been built with another 40 plus units on the west end of Carpinteria. So we're very pleased and very proud that we've been able to add affordable housing to our housing stock in recent years in great numbers.
How would you say the population is going to be any different in the future than it currently is? Do you think it's going to be more upscale, fewer low-income people, or do you hope that there might continue to be a mix?
I think we have a good mix now. The trend following the census is that the community is becoming more wealthy and older. That's affected school-age population, so the number of young people has declined over the last 20 years or so. And we can expect with real estate prices that that kind of thing will continue. talking about housing, housing opportunities, encouraging a variety of job types and industries in the community are ways that you can encourage folks to live and continue to age in your community. Right now we're considering a project for elderly living here in the community and convalescent care. So those kinds of facilities become important to allow people to age up in your community and remain here. We talked about affordable housing, providing affordable housing by design. That means apartment units and smaller apartment units, larger apartment units that can provide for families. That's also important.
I know one of the issues over time has been overcrowding in neighborhoods. Do you have any thoughts of why that happened and what's been done about it, and do we still have that issue?
Well, it's demand for housing, of course, and through the efforts of public agencies like the city and the county and not-for-profits like People's Self-Help Housing, we've been able to add quite a bit of housing, including farm worker housing, that has helped. There's also been private efforts, I know, of private flower growers and ranchers providing housing for workforce housing on their own. So all these efforts in the community over the last 15, 20 years has helped to take the pressure off. That doesn't mean that that still doesn't go on. People living in places that aren't suitable for housing and frankly aren't safe for housing. So our code compliance efforts are still important and have also been an integral part of the city ensuring that people are housed in appropriate places that are safe and healthy.
Let's switch to businesses now. And our area has a history of oil development. Can you talk a little bit about that? And more recently, how it's important to the community and some of the issues around that?
Oil development's been in Carpinteria for more than a century, I'm sure. The industry has been formally established here since at least the mid-50s in terms of the modern era. Standard Oil, Chevron operated right here where City Hall is, and at the oil and gas plant, the Carpinteria oil and gas plant behind us, for several decades. Until they sold their holdings to Veneco Inc. that continues to operate the Carpinteria oil and gas plant. There's also other agencies, other companies that operate offshore platforms and provide services to those platforms from the Carpinteria oil and gas plant.
And so there was the issue of, there's been Paradigm, the issue that wanted to develop an oil facility here. I guess it's part of the pattern of oil being developed here, but I'm trying to think how you weighed it on this before. Oil hasn't come here out of the blue. It's been here for a while, but now people are concerned of the ramifications of having oil here, I guess. Would you care to talk about the Paradigm issue and Veneco's desire to have a facility here?
Well, Veneco's proposed to add a new use, oil extraction, oil and gas extraction, which hasn't been here in Carpinteria historically. It's always been offshore. So bringing an onshore oil extraction operation is a new use being introduced to the Carpinteria community. And therefore, it's going to be looked at very carefully, of course, and raises issues with policy consistency, other goals of the city, other goals and regulations of the city land use plan, and finding that balance. Can that kind of use be introduced at the oil and gas plant or anywhere else in the community and still be consistent with the other resource protection policies and provisions of land use development that the city has established?
Tell me about the city's land use plan. What is that? How is it created, and what other planning goes on for the community?
Land use plan, generally referred to as a general plan under California law, is required for all cities. It's mandated that they have it. And it, in part, provides for the disposition of land uses over the community. That policy document is implemented through what most people know, which is zoning categories: commercial, residential, multifamily, where the regulations are established on how private development will occur on that property. The city's land use plan was established upon incorporation or shortly thereafter. It's evolved over time. At this point, with the physical development of the community, the establishment of the coastal zone and the urban-rural limit line, the city's physical makeup is pretty much set. We'll see some minor changes, but the layout of the land in terms of where certain uses are is pretty much fixed. And in the future, I think we'll see infill development, some minor modifications, but there won't be any dramatic growth outward, certainly, and inward we'll see reinvestment or new investment in the community, but not dramatic changes.
Tell me about the Coastal Commission's effect. I guess it was created after the oil spill in this area. How has that affected things in our community?
Well, the California Coastal Act, established in the late 70s, has had significant effect on the Carpinteria community. Carpinteria was a place that was growing outward for many decades, including into the 70s. And that area north of the freeway, those neighborhoods, single-family neighborhoods, are a reflection of that kind of growth, where there were development and annexations of agricultural land, one after another. The Coastal Act aims to protect coastal resources, including agricultural resources. And so in doing that and establishing the coastal regulations here in Carpinteria that were ultimately adopted and certified for the city, that put an urban limit line on the city and pretty much stopped the outward growth, focusing that growth from that point forward in the late 70s, early 80s inward.
And that has a bearing in what type of businesses or how things can be developed, in that they have to be approved by the coastal plan, the Coastal Commission, correct?
It did a number of things. It ensured that the agricultural resources that surround the city would be protected for the long term, the prime agricultural soils and those agricultural uses. So it ensured that agriculture was going to be long term an important part of the economy here in the valley. It also ensured that Carpinteria would remain a physically distinct place. It was certainly possible if the community continued to grow, that it would grow up the coast and ultimately merge with Summerlin and Montecito and lose some of that distinction. So it's a physically distinct place. It's going to be a relatively small place because it won't grow outwardly. So in terms of the influence on the economy and the character of the community, that Coastal Act was integral. And it was supported, of course, by policies adopted by the City of Carpinteria and the County of Santa Barbara.
Dave, what do you see as future trends, and is gentrification one of them?
I think the character of the community moving forward as we continue to see new investment in the community is one of the real challenges. People come to Carpinteria, people invest in Carpinteria and property and businesses because of what the community's like. They generally feel that it's an attractive place to live and work. And many of our policies and regulations are set up to try to preserve and protect those assets of the community, and that includes the built environment. So a lot of our regulations for new development will deal with issues like size of structures and the character of the structures to ensure that they're consistent with the character of the neighborhood as much as possible, while allowing for new and modern investments to occur. That's one way that the city works towards preserving and maintaining attributes that are positive about neighborhoods and districts in the Carpinteria community.
There isn't that much ag, is there, in the city proper, but I guess ag has a big influence in the city. Is it just a balancing act of controlling what happens with ag from the city, or would you care to weigh in on that?
Well, not sure I understand the question.
Okay, yeah, the question wasn't too clear. Well, in the past, there's been some tension between the growers and the environmentalists, regulating the nurseries and so forth. I guess one milestone perhaps was when the county came up with a county plan, what allowed the greenhouses to do, and then the city hasn't had any regulation of the greenhouses, have they?
No.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I have a question on that, but it's nice having the growers here. Well, and do you see ag as into the future continuing in the valley?
I think so. I think what you're referring to, the greenhouse program adopted by the county and the California Coastal Commission. And I think that what that did effectively was try to strike a balance between different types of agriculture in the valley. Greenhouse growing or agriculture, flower growing under glass is one type of agriculture that has certain kinds of impacts. Open field agriculture, orchard growing is a different kind of agriculture, and ultimately I think the plan aimed at striking that balance.
So we're recording now. Let's talk about transportation. What big transportation issues have been here during your tenure here, and when did you start here in Carpinteria City Hall?
January 1999.
So there's been freeway issues, a freeway widening, the train coming to town. I think you were saying before that when the economy got worse, there was less stress on the freeway, but now that the economy is better, there's more stress on the freeway. What have been some of the ramifications of what's going on with the freeway and trains and other transportation?
Yeah, the Highway 101 corridor is simply inadequate to carry the amount of traffic in a growing California and when the economy is humming. And so the effect of that is congestion on the 101 corridor as commuters move from Ventura up into jobs in Santa Barbara and Goleta. Causes air pollution, air quality, and quality of life issues for our community here. A lot of traffic during peak hours. Offloads on the freeway and impacts our service streets, causing congestion on our surface streets, wear and tear on our surface streets, costing the community in both dollars and health. Fortunately, there's a plan in place and improvements are underway now to widen the 101 freeway to let traffic move more easily through, especially at the peak hours. So phase 1 and phase 2 of that are complete. Phase 3 will occur right here in Carpinteria with the replacement of the Linden and Casitas interchanges and the extension of Via Real through to Casitas Pass and through to Linden Avenue, which will create a proper frontage road on the north side of the freeway. Phase 4 will widen the freeway, adding a third lane in each direction from Carpinteria through Montecito. These will be important projects in and of themselves, but they go hand in hand with improvements to public transportation. So the plan also includes additional bus service. It includes establishing a commuter rail service that will also assist in taking the load off of the 101 corridor and are critical to, again, improving quality of life here in Carpinteria by taking those vehicle trips off of the freeway, off of our surface streets, and moving people more efficiently.
Well, what is the thought of when the overpasses will be rebuilt and the freeway widened?
The construction is scheduled to start in 2016, in a little more than a year, the latter part of 2016. And that will take several years to finish, anywhere from 4 to 5 years to finish the interchanges project. Somewhere overlapping with that, we're hopeful that the freeway widening project between Carpinteria and Montecito will also get underway and should be complete in the early 2020s.
So, Dave, can you weigh in on the police enforcement, police department here in Carpinteria, how it's been and how it's changed?
Yes, when cities incorporate, law enforcement, control over local law enforcement is often one of the reasons why. And that, I believe, was true here in Carpinteria. Having a local police department was one of the reasons why the city incorporated. They wanted control and to be able to control the quality of that service. It was shortly after incorporation that the city created its police department and operated from the early 70s into the early 90s, at which time the city converted that to a contract with the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department. The reasons for that was policing had changed. It had become much more professionalized and specialized. The amount of services that were expected and needed in the community expanded greatly. And for a small department like Carpinteria in a small town, the cost to provide that kind of specialization and training for the deputies and the amount of turnover they were having was simply too expensive and infeasible over the long run. A Blue Ribbon Committee was created of community members and law enforcement representatives. They made a recommendation ultimately to the City Council that a contract with the Sheriff's Department be considered. So the Sheriff's contract began in, I believe, 1992 and has been very successful. The city's costs have been kept under control for law enforcement services. It's still a very expensive service, but compared to operating our own police department, it's been more cost effective. We also get the benefit of the specialization of a larger department that brings from homicide investigations to SWAT teams to helicopters and canine patrol. So all those things have benefited the community over time. One of the challenges that's created by having law enforcement services provided through a contract with a larger department is making that community connection. And we've worked hard to do a lot of things. We continue to work hard on ensuring that our law enforcement folks are connecting with our business community members and our residents in a way that they're familiar with them and they're comfortable with our law enforcement services, and they can provide input that will allow us to improve that service over time.
What are some of the law enforcement issues here in town? Are they any different than any other towns?
I don't think so. Crime is very low in Carpinteria. We're one of the lowest places in the county, and crime in Santa Barbara County generally is low. That's a part of a national trend, but in particular in our area, crime is very low, so we're very pleased that our law enforcement folks and our community members are doing a very good job being diligent. We have a large transient population of visitors that come in and out seasonally, so some of the issues we have in terms of visitors coming in and off the freeway and the opportunity for crime related to that are one of the challenges for law enforcement. They do a very good job of monitoring that and keeping up with that kind of potential here in the community. Some of the traffic control issues are certainly a challenge that they spend a lot of time with, monitoring traffic coming in and off of the freeway and in and around our arterial street system also.
Dave, tell me about the different downtown improvement programs that have gone on, particularly within your time here.
Yeah, well, it began actually before my time here in the 80s, where the city decided to invest in one of its most important assets, the downtown business district. Like many communities, new investment had moved out of the downtown and had been made in shopping centers, in particular Casitas Plaza and Shepherd's Plaza, and that was having an effect on the downtown. There was empty storefronts, the infrastructure was tired and old. Yet the fabric and the center of the community is still in the downtown, and the community fathers and elected officials, all the elected officials knew that it was important to establish the downtown, reestablish the downtown as the heart of the community. And that came through investment in the infrastructure. So the city made street improvements and landscape improvements, widened sidewalks to make it more pedestrian friendly. And that has allowed for new investment back into the downtown, private investment in the downtown over the years. It's been very successful.
Has it been certain phases or just kind of ongoing?
There's been two distinct phases. The first phase on Linden Avenue that occurred in the 1980s, and then in the 1990s, the second phase of the downtown T, as they call it, on Carpinteria Avenue.
What is the relationship with the Chamber of Commerce and Businesses and the city?
The city is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and we collaborate on a lot of efforts that help support business. So I sit on the Chamber Board, for example, and we've done a number of projects together, from doing outreach to the business community when the city's establishing new regulations that will have impacts on businesses, to doing promotion efforts like the Carpinteria First Committee and First Friday events, where the city and chamber and business people work closely together.
There are also quite a few nonprofits in town. I guess they're involved and do good projects in Carpinteria as well, correct?
Absolutely. The city can't do things alone. We provide a limited amount of services, have a limited amount of resources, but we're blessed with having a town where there's lots of other agencies, nonprofits, service organizations, and volunteer groups that meet many, many community needs.
Dave, can you weigh in on the visioning project and the new council starting in the 90s?
Sure. For every community, it's absolutely necessary to, for every government to engage the community, to get feedback from the community. You can't operate, you can't develop plans and programs and services in a vacuum. So interaction with the community and getting the input from the community is essential. A visioning process is simply a way of doing that. Getting all the players in the community to the table, getting people to volunteer their time to help with that effort, and going through kind of a structured program to develop ideas that can be implemented in policy and regulation down the line. The last time that occurred was in the mid-90s. There had been a turnover in the city council, new members of the city council, and it was a ripe time, an opportune time for them to begin a visioning process that ultimately was implemented through the city's general plan and local coastal plan policy documents, and to which we're still implementing in various policies and regulations to this day. It's now been, of course, over 20 years since that process began in the early 90s of visioning, and now we're going to be starting another visioning process and strategic planning effort here in the Carpinteria community in the next few years.
So would you say there's a history of public access in this area?
Well, we're on the coast of California, so everyone wants to come here and enjoy the coastal resources. So yes, that's always been an important priority for the city, and we've made many, many improvements over the years in order to allow improved public access to the coast and establish resources and amenities that the public can use. It's been challenging. We have challenges like the freeway and the railroad corridor that divide the city and create barriers to people getting to the coast. So we've made improvements over the years. Coastal trails, we have a master plan now to establish grade-separated crossings at several locations along the railroad corridor in order to get people from one side to the other safely. Public parking improvements in the downtown, beach improvements, public parks like the bluffs and open space areas at the salt marsh and the bluffs, all critical to public access.
Where might some of the railroad crossings be in the future?
There's several kind of strategically located along the corridor. One at the west end of town, where between the beach neighborhood and the downtown neighborhoods. One over near the Concha Loma neighborhood, and a third out on the east end towards the nature preserve, and then finally at the far east end of town at the Rincon, a overcrossing, a bridge from the bluff top down to Rincon County Park is the furthest along and is actually in the permitting stage.
Okay. Dave, tell me what influence the state park has on our community.
Well, it's a big influence in a number of ways. The park physically is situated just about in the center of town along the coast, so it takes up a large amount of space, provides a large amount of open space right in the center of town. So it's physically important. It also brings over 1 million visitors a year into the Carpinteria community, so it's an important part of the economy.
I'm sorry about that. I'm going to turn my phone off. This is Larry making a mistake on camera. Would you pick it up again, saying how many visitors come because of the state park?
Yeah, over 1 million visitors a year come to Carpinteria through the state park. That includes both campers, overnight campers, and day use folks that use the picnic areas and the beach on a daily basis. So very important. Those people also come into the community and demand services, support the economy. So it's a very important element in our community.
And recently they partnered with us on a couple of park projects.
That's right. We're always looking for opportunities to work closely with the state park to improve the experience that visitors to Carpinteria have, and to try to have a collaboration that can help both the state park and the city. One of those was the Tomel Park and the Linden to Palm Trail. That was a collaboration between the Rotary Club, the Morning Rotary Club of Carpinteria, state parks, and the city, where we were able to get grants and private donations and work on a design that provided an interpretive play area called Tomel Play Area, and a connecting trail between Linden Avenue and Palm that provided for stormwater management improvements and an improved experience for campers and the public that want to pass between Linden and Palm.
Dave, what would you say is the trend in business in Carpinteria? What type of businesses are coming to town and will continue to?
Yeah, we're seeing a couple of things in recent years. We're seeing more restaurants and visitor serving establishments in our downtown, and I think we'll continue to see that. We're also seeing corporate headquarters and some high-tech businesses that are still coming to Carpinteria, and I think we'll see more of that in the future. Carpinteria is attractive in that sense, in that we're in between Ventura and Santa Barbara, and businesses that locate here can draw from the employment pools in both of those larger areas.
I guess it's a balancing act of bringing visitors serving people in town, but then also have them leave, and so they're only here part-time. Would you say it's a balance to have just the right amount of people coming in, and we don't want to be overrun like some towns in Southern California? But
well, absolutely. I think that's a big part of what the community, how it sees itself. It doesn't see itself as a tourist town. It sees itself as a real town. And as I mentioned before, people come to Carpinteria to visit and to invest here because of the way it is. And that's not a tourist town, that's a real place. And by a real place, it means that businesses in your downtown serve not just visitors, but they're able to serve residents and employees that work here. And that's an important balance, as you say.
well, thanks so much. You're doing a great job as city manager. Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you for all you do.
Okay, and happy 50th anniversary.